Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another Hit Save Indie interview. This is for the indie game preservation project that we do here at Hit Save, where we talk to fantastic indie developers about their marvelous games. So, my name is Jonas Rosland. I'm here with Hit Save, and today I am joined by.
Jaiden Alemni. Hello.
Hello, Jaden, and you're with Studio Alemni.
Yes, yes. Studio Alemni is currently just me. I am a solo developer, but I've got that official studio name, so I'm ready to present my projects under that name and hopefully expand someday into a actual game studio. But that's like sort of the name I go by to keep things official.
That's awesome. So, you have your own studio. You're working on a solo project here called Legends of Astravia. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, yeah, Astravia is actually the right way to say it. I say Astravia a lot, but Astravia is kind of I'd say the canonical way to pronounce it because it kind of comes from Astra, like astral, like stars.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, I was playing the demo here a couple of weeks ago, and it was super fun. Um, I had a blast playing through it, and I definitely want to see more. But before we dive into the game, I want to dive into who you are a bit, Jaden. So, how did you get started with game development? How did you get here? How did you uh, figure out, you know what? I want to start my own studio and I want to do this. How did you get here?
Well, it's perhaps a bit cliche. I've always wanted to be a game developer. When I was a kid, I liked more than just playing games. I distinctly remember playing The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time was the big one. I remember playing through the games and being like, "This is so cool. Like, how does this work?" Like, I had this sort of like obsession with like, how are these like worlds made? Like, sort of the mechanics involved. When I was in high school, I actually got access to RPG Maker, like an old version of RPG Maker.
Oh, nice.
And their Game Maker was another one. We had the home PC back in like the 2000s, hooked up by like AOL internet, and I had the fortune of being able to sort of play around, and I was obsessed. I loved it. I loved like trying to figure out how they worked. But then when it came time to go to college, like I really wanted to go to game design school.
Hmm.
My parents weren't really into it, and a lot of people sort of like talked me out of it because they're like, well, everybody wants to be a game developer and it's a really hard industry to get into. And I was like, yeah, I'll do something safe. So I went to school for art for a little while.
Hmm.
I was going to go into like graphic design, and then I decided to go into IT, like information technology, because I was pretty good with computers. So I got my associate's degree in IT, and I just couldn't get the bug out of my brain. I just like game development kind of just kept coming up. I would just like on and off like work on projects and stuff, and then 2017 rolls around. RPG Maker, one of the first engines I played around with, they're having a contest called the Indie Game Making Competition, and I think it was for like $5,000 towards your like first indie game. And I was like, oh my god! I was like, I'm gonna do it. Like I'm gonna try this. And I started actually making like an alpha prototype of what would eventually become Legends of Astravia. And it was bad. The demo was not good back then. But it was a good like experience. People were like interested in the story and stuff. And I kind of just kept refining that idea, and I started self-teaching a little bit more, like learning more like theory about game design and more like complex concepts. And I taught myself how to program in Ruby, which is the language that RPG Maker uses. And then this year, I like started, or rather I released the, like, upgraded demo after all of these years of sort of really solidifying the concept, and that's how it all happened, and now I'm, like, going for the actual, like, game developer thing now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, are you doing this full time right now, or?
It is only part-time, it is still, I have a day job, it's hard, because like, it's not really sustainable, so my goal is to kind of finish up the first chapter of Legends of Astravia, have this, like, complete game, and then once I've got something that's, like, put together and seems like it has a lot of potential, then I might consider pitching to, publishers and looking into things to actually turn it into, like, the real deal. But for now, I have my day job, which I like my day job too, and it's always such a trade-off, right? Because like when you're comfortable and you're making money doing your thing, but you wanna do what you love,
Yep.
you gotta kinda make that decision, so we'll see. But for now, yeah, it is part-time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can totally relate. Of course, I have a day job too, and
Yeah.
it allows me to do things like this, which I'm
Exactly.
really grateful for.
Mm.
So, programming in Ruby, is that something you do within your day job as well?
I don't do well, actually, it's very like there's a little bit because I work in web, so there is like a little bit of Ruby, but for the most part, no, actually, I don't. I use like JavaScript and whatnot in
Mm.
my day job, and it's kind of funny because the newest, I use an older version of RPG Maker, and the newest engines use JavaScript.
Oh,
And I don't like it. I don't like it, like, I'd rather use Ruby, like, so it's kind of funny because like, I could probably use the new one and, like, be able to use JavaScript because I use it for my job, but I'm like, I like Ruby too much. I'm, like, kind of stubborn about it. It's such a cool programming language, and I enjoy, like, making the systems in it, so, yeah. Like, I feel like the last Ruby programmer standing.
there are a lot of them out there
There
still.
are. There are,
Um,
yeah.
so, for RPG Maker, so you're doing it in Ruby right now. The new RPG
Mhm.
Maker is JavaScript. Is it possible at all to port it over to the new one, or would you have to remake everything?
Yeah, it would be possible. I would have to rewrite, like, all of my scripts and stuff, and the thought of rewriting my beautiful Ruby code in JavaScript makes me, like, I don't wanna do it. So, yeah, I don't know. I was able to find, um and maybe this is, like, a little technical, but, the old engine that I use RPG Maker XP, which came out in, like, 2007, a very long time ago, and it's sort of long since abandoned, and it was made for, like, old versions of, like, Windows and stuff, and
Hmm.
it wasn't it actually ran very poorly as is, and there was this project called MKXP, which was originally made to, like, port, old RPG Maker XP games to Linux, and one of the games that most people will probably be familiar with is To the Moon,
Hmm.
which was like a very successful indie game, and it was made in RPG Maker XP. And they used this MKXP engine to not only port it to Linux, but it made the game run a lot better.
Mm.
So I was able to use that same technology for Legends of Astravia, so it like feels like the new RPG Maker engine anyway. So people tend to be a little surprised when I tell them that I made it in RPG Maker XP. They're like, "How is it? I thought it was the new one. Like it looks like the new engines." And I'm like, "Well, it's this technology allows me to do it. I'm very grateful." So, and I'm able to port it to Mac OS as well,
Hmm.
which is something that wasn't possible with the old versions of the engine. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I was looking at that, and yeah, I was a little surprised that it's being made in an engine that's what, 15 years old now?
Yeah, XP it's quite old. I'm surprised the editor itself still like opens on my computer. But it's There's just something very endearing about it, the old-fashioned sort of tiling system. It has, like, a really good map-making system, which is kind of why I was drawn to it over the newer, makers, because when I started on Legends of Astravia, the way the, like, map-making system worked, I in the newer ones, I didn't really like it. They've since updated it now, and I'm, like, a little torn, but, uh, yeah, I don't know, I there's something about it that, like, it's kind of, it's like
As I was playing it, as I said, as I was playing it, it definitely didn't feel like a 15-year-old engine. I definitely thought you were using a newer engine for this. So yeah, it's fantastic with the old engine and this MKXP, was it?
Yeah,
That you
MKXP is the name of the project that sort of made it's an open source project. It's perfectly okay to use by RPG Maker's terms, and it allows like a lot more flexibility with the engine that wasn't there in that old 15-year-old version. So there's a lot of sort of manual work to do on the side to like make it work, but in my opinion, it's worth it because it let me do like all of the things that I wanted to do with it. I was starting to get really bottlenecked by that in the old version of the Maker, um, in that alpha version, which we'll, I'm sure, get to a little bit later.
Yeah, yeah, we'll dive into that. So, tell us a bit more about the game itself. Who are the people that we see here, or at least some of the main characters that we see here?
Yes. So, in this key art, we see Oliver at the front here, which he is the main character of the game, and who the player plays as. And we don't know a whole lot about Oliver. He has amnesia, which
I love
is
that
like
trope.
it's very funny because like some people are like, oh, amnesia trope, and some people are like, yes, amnesia trope. And so I like it. It's very true to that sort of classic nostalgic, like we're getting into it with the Japanese style RPG. We're going Final Fantasy 6. We're just like, we get to learn more about the character as he grows and learns more about himself, and I really like that.
Hmm.
So we play as Oliver. He doesn't really know a whole lot about himself, except that he's rather good at using magic, and he doesn't know where he learned magic, but he wants to find that out. And he's found in the forest, um, at first by the woman to the right of him in this picture, which we don't know who she is. We don't know what her motives are, but she's
Mysterious.
there. She's a bit mysterious, and she's there, and she sort of leaves him behind to be found by Azel, who is in the back. Uh, and Azel is a mystician, which is what we call the magic users in the world of Astravia. And Azel finds Oliver, and he has kind of not a lot of patience for Oliver's amnesia and his questions. Uh, he seems a bit worried about what's going on and a bit like panicky and trying to get to the temple that's in the forest that they're in. So he
He's
lets
on a
Oliver.
mission already.
He's already on a mission. Yeah, he runs into Oliver. He finds Oliver, and Oliver's like, "Can I go with you? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. Like, can I follow you?" And he's like, "All right, fine. I'll let you follow me, but like we have to go. We need to like figure out what's going on here." And we find out that he has a bit of a reason for being so like short with Oliver, and that's because in the area that they're in, there are knights, which next to Oliver in this key art is in fact a knight. And Hazel warns Oliver about the knights because the knights hunt mysticians. The knights don't like mysticians, and there's sort of a tension going on in Astravia. We don't really know fully why, but some people are afraid of magic users, and they they want to stay away from them. And we get kind of two different sides of this story because we get the magic users afraid of the knights, and
Hmm.
Azel warns Oliver about, the knights hunting and killing mysticians. But then we hear about people who are afraid of mysticians too. So it becomes sort of a like, who do we believe? Like,
Hmm.
what side of the story, you know, is the true one, and that's kind of part of the whole plot. Is Oliver kind of finds himself on both sides of the story, learning about it and the history of Astravia, which is a bit it's a bit muddied. There's a lot of sort of dark stuff that has gone on that Oliver doesn't know about because he, lost his memory.
Yeah, and as I was playing through the demo, I think it was Azel talking about stuff that happened, but most people have already forgotten it.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
definitely history seems a bit muddied, and
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely wanna see more.
There's
Um,
a lot there's a lot to tell. There's I'm excited to share more, so
Awesome. So what we see here is a fighting scene, and I was very amazed by the artwork and the thought going into the fighting mechanics here. I thought this
Mm.
was really really cool. It's time based, but also you need to. It's not instant, but you can make things that speeds up your attacks, and it had a lot of depth that I was not expecting. When I started playing here, I was like, oh, I need to pay attention, and pretty much immediately, even with the basic enemies here, I needed to pay attention. So, can you tell us a bit more about the game mechanics here, the fighting mechanics?
Yes, so the battle system, it takes a bit of influence from some folks might be familiar with the active time battle system, which was in the old Final Fantasy games and Chrono Trigger, where you sort of wait for like a bar to fill up and then your character gets their turn. And if you took too long, other enemies could attack you. This idea was like further refined in a PlayStation RPG called Grandia, and it showed that like bar. And I thought that bar was super cool, where you see each character in relation to each other as they're like moving in time, and you kind of can plan your actions around that. But you still had to wait. You had to wait till your character got sort of to the end of the bar, then you would choose your action, and then they would, like, move on the bar, and it was kinda like this race to get your turn in first, and I wanted to expand on that, and I was like, "Well, what if you can just pick your action right away? Like, what if you don't have to wait? What if it's completely fluid?" So I, refine that system so you can choose your action right away. And the quicker you choose your action, you kind of get an advantage, but you still have enough time to sort of decide and kind of be a little strategic with it. Um, and that system was really cool. And then I had some help from some colleagues, and I had a colleague suggest to me to let you speed up or slow down battle. And that, like, so you can use the trigger buttons on your controller to speed up battle. So if you've picked your actions, you don't
Hmm.
have to wait. You can just fast forward to the end and get your action in and start it over again. But if you need a little more time to think, you can kind of slow things down. So it's kind of a weird hybrid between a turn-based system and like a completely active system. And then I had I had that going on and it was like going really well. And then in the demo, I had a lot of feedback in the demo where folks, when they went into like the menus to pick like skills, they were getting frustrated because the system was always active, they would
Hmm.
get interrupted while they were, like, picking items from a list. So I further refined it with another colleague's suggestion to slow time down a lot when you're in a list. Very similar to I think Final Fantasy VII Remake did a similar thing. So,
Hmm.
like, time almost slows down to a stop, but not quite. It's still pressuring you a little bit, but you have time to kind of think and then keep things going. So it's like it's very fluid. It makes you like I don't know. It's pretty exciting to play because you're like always doing something. You don't have to sit and wait. You
Hmm.
don't have to uh, you don't have to like button mash either. Like there's like this nice balance I think between the two systems.
Yeah, I definitely thought the combat there was very fluid. There was no as you said, it wasn't really a waiting game, and there was always something that you could do. You could
Mm,
also pause to make sure that you were ready to
yeah.
block when the enemies attack and everything like that. It has a lot of depth, and I had a lot of fun just figuring out what I should do when, because some enemies are, of course, faster than others. Some enemies hit harder than others, and yeah, it was a lot of fun to figure out. And the constant um, time the constant passing of time, that's the word I was looking for. So the
Mm.
constant passing of time, even when you're choosing things, kind of reminded me of the Fallout VATS system as well.
Yeah,
So you're like, yes,
yeah,
now I'm focused on something, but it's your enemies still move, and you still have to
yeah,
actually make a decision. We haven't paused the game, we have just slowed it down enough so you can make a calculated choice, and I really like that. I really, really
yeah.
like it. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. So I searched out all the enemies that I could find. So I battled every enemy that I could find because I had a blast playing through this. So this was super,
Oh,
super fun.
I'm glad. Yeah, that was a funny thing I had noticed with people who were playing it. I make this I put the enemies on the map screen. I make it so that you can sort of avoid enemies because that's something that I didn't like about old games is like the
Hmm.
random encounters that sort of just interrupt you and while you're playing and it's like but I found that even though I made battles optional, most people like enjoyed the battles so much that they were like seeking out enemies to fight. Like I wasn't anticipating that. So I was like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah, it was just really, really fun. So yeah, I absolutely do. I do not enjoy random encounters either. It's it's a thing of a bygone era, I think.
Yes.
And but giving the player the choice of actively seeking out enemies and putting them on the map, as you said there, I think it's brilliant.
Mhm, thank you. Yeah.
So this is the beginning of the game here. This is where you kind of start out, and this is where you're found.
Mhm.
Um, the um, the intro. We're not gonna show the pictures of the intro, the paper cut intro.
Yes,
But I
yes.
really,
Cut
really
the
like that. I highly
mhm,
recommend anyone that's interested in this, go play the demo. The intro is
mhm.
just fantastic. It's a really cool demo, a really cool intro.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, I, I had done it all sort of manually, like the paper cut, like, drawings, and then, like, moved them, like, individually to sort of get that sort of it was very inspired by, The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker, like, that beginning opening scene where you see the, like, sort of paper graphics. I just like that style of storytelling because it brings you, back to that era of, you know, really long ago. It really, like, sets the tone. So it was a lot of fun to do too. It was like I had a lot of fun making that scene, and I hope to, like, make a couple more throughout the game, like, and make use of that system because it's cool. It's really cool to do.
Yeah, it was super cool to see. Again, I was not expecting that from an early demo like this, so it was really cool to see. Um,
I Yeah.
one thing
I
that I
think there's a
really,
screenshot in the, press kit,
oh yeah,
actually, of
yeah,
it, if you wanted to showcase
let me
it a
see
little bit, yeah. Yeah, exactly, so
this one.
yeah, yeah, so it's a good, like, example of what it looks like.
Yep. Um, the world itself is very colorful.
Mm,
You have very bright colors, very bright, and it's easy to see where you should go, and items that are important. Was that was that a choice that you made? You
mhm.
wanted more colors in the world because a lot of games are very bleak otherwise, especially when
E
we look at ruins because we have a lot of ruins here, but it's very colorful.
Yeah, that was a conscious decision, and it actually especially with, like, the opening area, it's a swamp,
Hmm.
and people often associate swamps with, like, this darkness and this bleakness, and I actually wanted it to be colorful and sort of have, like, this whimsical positive element to it. The sprite work for the tiles, like the maps are actually some of them are default assets from RPG Maker XP,
Hmm.
and the originals were a lot more desaturated. I actually colorized them more and like made the colors pop more because I liked that uh, like, that's something I really like about older games, especially, like, on the Nintendo 64 and stuff. Some of them were almost comically, like, colorful, and I
Hmm.
miss that. I like that sort of just, really, really, saturated, look on things. Golden Sun is obviously another big
Hmm.
inspiration for the game, and that was another, rather, that was the thing that they did in the game. Everything was just super colorful, clear to see where you can go. Like all of the characters like pop out and are distinct. I'm a big fan of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. And there's also when you start the game, you had a kind of a new type of control scheme as well.
Yes, yes, and it trips some folks up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it did for me for the first few minutes before I got used to it.
Yeah, I actually had added a prompt to the demo after getting some feedback from some players because I was a little adamant on having that new control style be the default one
Hmm.
because I felt like it worked really well with the like fast-paced battle system. But I still like to give people options, especially like for accessibility reasons, and let people like change the key bindings and stuff if they want. But I actually directly referenced Super Mario RPG because I noticed it had that same system where you could quickly switch between actions just by pressing the face buttons on the controller. And that's kind of why I had designed it that way. So, like, if you're actively attacking an enemy and an enemy does something because it's real time and you're like, oh no, I don't want to attack them now. I want to defend, or I want to use an item, or I want to switch to a skill. It's one button press instead of two, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but, like, when you're in it and you're, like,
Hmm.
doing it, it's, like, suddenly you're like, "Whoa, this is so much faster." But I saw some folks get tripped up by it too. Some people still preferred the other control scheme even after getting used to it, and that's A-okay too, so, but yeah, I wanted to try something new and interesting to go with the new and interesting system, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I definitely liked it, and once I got used to it, after the first few battles, I was like, this makes sense. So I'm definitely on the train for the new control scheme. I really like it. It works really well. It tripped me up a few times throughout the demo as well, but I understand it and I like it, and it's very again, I'm going to use the word fluid because it's like easy. It's very
Yeah,
easy to
yeah.
understand.
Mm.
Um, one of the enemies, and we see this here on the screen, one of the enemies that I hate in the game are the bees.
Bees.
Um, uh, I went in thinking, oh, it's just bees. But they kicked my ass for a bit. I was not
Yes.
expecting this. It
They're
was
very
just,
fast.
yeah, they're
And
very, very fast.
they're very fast and they have poison, and everybody loves poison mechanics in RPGs. I know it's everybody's favorite, so I
Oh,
had
it's
to
the
put it in,
best.
you
It's
know?
the best. Yeah, for sure. No, it's the best. Yeah, I think I died the first time I
Oh,
encountered them. I was
no.
like, oh, okay. Um, but the save, having multiple saves definitely helped. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, those beasts definitely got the best of me there for a bit.
they were worse in the alpha build of the
Oh,
game too.
really?
They were even scarier in early versions of the game. Those are actually toned down in the demo, which means I should have like a B final boss at the rate I'm going
Oh,
because
yes.
they seem to be very intimidating.
I love it. So the characters here, I want to dive into the characters a bit more. So let's dive into them. So we got the different characters here. Let me see. We're going to start with Oliver.
Mm.
So this is Oliver. You already talked about him a bit, but the main character.
Yes, yeah. So this is the main character of the game. I actually did do this artwork. It was kind of like an experimental thing. Came out pretty good. But the thing in his design here that you'll see is he has he has the sword in one hand, he has the magic in the other hand. And that's like a really key part of his character throughout the game is he's sort of like the bridge between, the knights of the world and the mysticians of the world. Because he kind of gets a side of both stories. And also because he's the main character and you can't really swap him out in battle, you'll get new characters throughout the game that you can use in battle, but I don't think I'm gonna make it so that you can take Oliver out of battle. So I wanted to have him be kind of well-rounded. Like you
Mm.
can get sort of some physical affinity out of him and you can get some magic affinity out of him. So you have this spell sword motif going on with his design. Um, which I had you can see here in the key art. And his clothes are otherwise simple. I wanted something kind of not too complex in contrast with Azel, which we'll get to later.
Yeah. So
But yeah,
yeah, let's dive into Azel a bit.
his design's a little more complex. Very very, like, classic I'm gonna say wizard, I know they're mysticians in this world, but sort of the adorned robes show, like, his, like, class, he's obviously a powerful magic user, he comes from a place that is not nearby, it sort of shows um, this, like, fanciness to his character. Yeah, he was a fun design to come up with all of like the different robes and the contrasting colors and stuff. Um,
And
and you'll see the gold jewelry is actually like a thing like among mysticians, and I have a little bit on each character that is a magic user, and then of course the blue hair is something that we see across the magic users too. So there is actually a lore reason for that.
oh,
Um, yeah.
and I also believe I also see black fingernails.
Yes. That was it was funny, I was, like, working on I think it was this art piece because the artist that, helped me with this or that I had commissioned for this, they also helped me with the key art, which I know we'll go over later, but, basically, I gave them a sketch. They sent me, the beautiful line work, of the character, and then I colored the line work in after the fact, and, yeah, when I was going through coloring I was like, "You know what?" I'm like, "We're gonna paint his fingernails." Like, there's just something about it. We're gonna give him black fingernails. It was just in the moment thing, and, like, I love it. And you don't notice it really unless you're, like, paying attention, and
Hmm.
if you do, you're like, "Cool," like, distinguished gentleman paints his nails on Sundays.
I like it. I like it. We have a few other characters here, here as well. So let's check out some of the character profiles.
Yes. So this is Minerva. I actually just revealed her on Twitter the other day, which we'll learn more about her later on. We're on Oliver. So yeah, this is the key art for Oliver. This is Serena, who is on that main key art. She's a knight who Oliver is going to meet. This is Arlen, who we haven't really heard much about yet, but he's also a knight, and you can see he's a bit more decorated. But we'll learn more about him later on in the game, and this is obviously Azel's profile art. Um, this is Baldric, who was featured in the original alpha demo. He was actually there's something a little interesting about him is he was in the role of Azel, like he was what Azel currently is in the demo. He was in that role in the alpha version. So Oliver in the alpha version, which we'll kind of talk about later, but he like wakes up in town and it like Baldric actually goes with him to the dungeon. And
Hmm.
I reworked the story a little bit. And so we get Baldric a little bit later and his story arc has changed a little bit, but you see he also has the night motif, but it's a little bit different for him. So we get to learn a little bit more about him as the game goes on and his association with the knights and his all of the knights have that sort of collar that like sweater like turtleneck type
Mm-hmm.
thing going on, and his is a little bit more worn with age, so we can tell he's got somewhat of a past there.
Very cool. Very cool. So all these characters, of course, these are the profiles for them. But then
Yes.
for the game, you created some fantastic character sprites as well.
Yes. Well, I the character sprites are a paid commission. The artist's name is Bert. He did an incredible job. Like I still look at the sprites and I'm like kind of floored by how fantastic they look, and how they really like every design aspect, important design aspect of the characters is captured in the sprite, which is incredible to me because like the sprites are small. You don't really have like a lot of room to work, but like all of these really key aspects are visible and make them look really distinct in that battle scene. Um, so it's just great to see them come to life, so to speak, in that way.
Yeah, I think the sprite work here is just stellar. It looks so darn good. Um,
It does, it's very good.
yeah, it's just fantastic sprite artwork here. So yeah, this is
Thank you,
fantastic.
thank
And
you.
this one, the big tree. What did you call it?
So Solik or Solich was the name for it, and I I actually don't remember how I came up with the name. It like I know that it's soul and then lich, like the monster.
Hmm.
I forgot where I got soul from, but yeah, it's like this big tree monster basically that you encounter in the first dungeon, which has it's earth themed, but throughout the dungeon you sort of see like the vegetation and you see like the rocks like intertwined with the vegetation. So with this boss, when I kind of came up with the design, I wanted that same like motif in its design. And so like this is what I came up with, and then of course the sprite artist like executed it amazing. Like
Hmm.
it looks so great and it looks super cool in game. Uh and yeah, he like swings down his giant like rock hammer fist. It's like really neat.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think I want to move into the key art process that we've alluded to a few times here because
Yes.
this is really really cool, I think. So let's start with the first picture that you sent over here.
This was a lot of fun to do too. So this was my sketch of the key art. So I had talked to the artist. Her name is Ruen. They're very good at what they do. Uh, I sent them. I came up with this sketch, and kind of got like the idea. I actually spent quite a lot of time thinking about sort of the composition of how like all of the characters were gonna like fit and where the logo was gonna go before I gave it to them. So yeah, so this was the sketch that I had, completed for them, and I was like, "Feel free to make changes." She was like, "Is it okay if I make, like, a few changes?" I'm like, "Of course, yeah, like, whatever works." And then she sends me back a sketch, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was like it's so professional, looks so cool. Really, like, brought the characters to life, and, like, captured, like, the essence of kinda what I'm going for with the game. And yeah, so I gave them the okay on the sketch, and then they sent me back, or well, this was yeah, I like placed the logo a little bit, sort of arranged it to see how like the composition would look, and it was good. And then of course they sent back this gorgeous line art, which was the commission that I had done for them, or what I had commissioned them to do. So they sent me back this lovely line art, and then I started coloring it. And I have a background in graphic arts, but it took me some time. I think it took me about an entire month to get through this thing, and really make it something that I was happy with. And it was just kind of layering and playing with different lighting. As I was like, you'll actually see this first example, the background is dark and the foreground was light, and I was like, "That looks really weird." So as I reworked it, I sort of reversed that, so the characters in the background are, darker, or the characters in the foreground are darker and the characters in the background are lighter, and that, like, really pulled it together, and it was just adding layer after layer and just changing the colors around and stuff, until I could make it, oh, what it is. Yeah, so there was a couple more. This was, like, another pass with the shadows. This was the like, final pass, so, like, all of the colors were done, and then I sort of moved the sliders around, yeah, and, like, made it sort of evened it out and made it look more cinematic, I guess, and yeah, so that was the process. It was a
Uh,
lot of fun. It was a lot of work.
I bet, but it looks amazing.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank
I
you.
think yeah, it looks fantastic, and it's really cool to see it from the original art that you sent
Mm.
over. The like, hey, here's what I think, and then seeing this here.
Yeah, yeah, it's very, very cool to see it, like, imagined the way I was picturing it in my head, because it's a very frustrating process, right? Like, we get this image in our head, and then we sort of make a sketch, and it's not quite what we were imagining in our head, and then, going through this process, like, I was able to, like, make it happen, and I'm super glad.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's super. It's beautiful. You did a fantastic job,
Thank you.
coloring and shading and everything here. It looks absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Really, really cool. Um, so we, I want to dive into the alpha a bit, so people can see like we've already shown what the game looks like right now. People can try the demo as well, but I want to show people what the alpha looked like, and then I want to dive a little deeper into your dungeons and how they're created.
Yeah.
And but let's start with the alphas here.
This is so nostalgic. Yeah, so this was when I started in this was I think this screenshot's from 2018, so this was after this was even after refining this sort of, 2017, like, demo that I had, for that contest. But yeah, it was in like, locked resolution. This was, like, sort of more true to the default RPG Maker, design. You can see some of the, like, core ideas were here. Oh my gosh, that old Oliver design is so funny. It was, yeah, oh my goodness. It's come a long way. This is the Essence system, which I actually changed a bit, after, like, thinking about the system and how it worked. It changed through to the new demo, which I know we'll get into sort of the mechanics later, but, yeah, and then, of course, that battle system. It's changed so much, you barely see that time bar at the bottom, so Ugh, yeah. It's been a long time of, like, sort of refining it.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to see the how far it's come. So seeing the alpha here and then playing the demo as well and contrasting the two, you
Yeah.
can definitely see how far it's come.
Yeah, it certainly has. The old alpha was also, like, direction like, the movement was gridlocked, so you only moved, like, one tile at a time, and one of the big changes I made that took me a really long time to do with the new demo was that sort of, gridless movement that, like, smooth, like, all 8 directions, free movement, and it makes such a world of difference, like, if I ever go back to the alpha just to, like every now and again, I'll go back just to, like, remind myself how far I've come, and it's like, "Oh my goodness, this is so uncomfortable, like, how did it work like this for so long? Because it feels so good to move, like, freely, without that restriction. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is awesome. So within the game, of course, we got multiple different venues, so to speak. We got dungeons, we got overworld, we got a castle or a ruin.
Mm.
How do you build these out, and how do you think about what do you think about when you're building these out?
So, I have sort of a process. So, what I'll do is I'll usually, kind of it, I'll do a document first. So I'll actually sort of type out what my plans are for an area. I'll sort of summarize what the area is about, like the purpose it serves for the game, sort of the key aspects of the area, and then kind of the mechanics of that area. And I do this for all of the areas in the game, not just the dungeons. So, like, when the player starts the game in like the demo in particular, they go through this area, Morden Forest and Mordem Swamp, and in my mind, it's still kind of a dungeon. And even the towns are still kind of a dungeon, right? They all sort of
Mhm.
serve this purpose, and you have like a path that you want the player to go through. So I start on paper first, and then I'll open up the editor sometimes before I even do something like this image we have on screen. I'll open up the editor and I'll kind of like rough out like some map like tiles to get like the spacing and stuff. And then I'll do something like this picture, at least specifically for dungeons, where I plan out the structure and the path. Um, so I have a good idea of kind of what I'm getting into so I don't get like lost in it as I'm designing because it's very easy to sort of start designing and then get kind of lost in the details and not have this like I need this like big picture on top. And I got a lot of like these sort of ideas from studying like how like the Legend of Zelda did like their dungeons. There's like the series on YouTube called Boss Keys.
Mm,
That's really good. That talks about it. I had a colleague who actually like went to school for game design, and he's very good at level design, and he gave me some pointers on this kind of like level design as well. And I've also really like liked level design. Like when I originally wanted to go to school for game design, like I wanted that to be my specialty. I like the sort of environment that the player has to traverse the most. I think it's the most important part of the game. So yeah, so I make something like this that's like very primitive, just like gives me this like idea of where they're gonna like progress and how they're gonna get to the goal of the dungeon, which in this case we've got the beautiful skull that I drew in MS Paint uh, for the boss. And then once that's done, I do the actual map in game, and this is a screenshot of like the whole map in game. There's actually a couple rooms missing from this. So I map it all out in game first, and then I actually took this giant screenshot and I threw it in Photoshop and I
mm,
dimmed it, and then I put these icons here and I sort of to like plan out where I was going to place like the enemies and the items and stuff that the player gets. which is funny because like, you look at something like this and it reminds me of, like, the old gaming magazines back in
Hmm.
the day, like, that would tell you, like, where to find secrets and stuff. It's kinda like the same idea, and I found it's really useful, um, for
So you're gonna
designing as well.
sell a guidebook for the game
I would
later?
love to, I would love to. I mean, there's one that's already, like, for free that, like, goes with the demo, but it's not, like, fancy or anything. I'd love to do, like, the classic, like, game manual, like the old games. That'd be so cool. That'd be so cool. So yeah, this is kinda like what my process looks like. You actually can see too on this screenshot all of the, like, colored tiles that are used, like, in debug mode, sort of for all of those, like, spots that you jump on. So, like, that's kinda like a cool little, like, side thing. 'Cause I have to, like, place all of those in the map editor first, and then they're not visible in the game because, well, yeah, obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And then this is the full layout of the demo and actually spoiling a little bit of later area. The bottom half of the map is not, in the game yet. But yeah, you see this sort of Morden Forest, starting area that the player progresses through, and I wanted it to just kinda be a straight shot, like, to kinda just give you an idea of, the like, pace you into the more, like, twisty paths of
Hmm.
the, swamp area. It's a relatively simple, like, straight path, though, because it's the introduction. I just wanted it to be, really simple and gentle introduction to the world, and its mechanics. And then, of course, I think later areas I'm looking forward to doing more complicated designs, which you can see at the bottom map is kind of more of an example. It's like almost a maze.
Hmm.
Uh,
Almost looks a little like a dragon down to the left.
yeah, a little bit, a little bit. It's got those like, yeah, the twists and turns.
Yeah, I think it looks really cool. Plays really well. I like the straight shot, as you said, just
Mm,
like to get you used to the game. But while it looks like on the overhead map here, it looks like a straight shot and then up to the temple. But there's a lot of nooks and crannies where you can find things and find
yes.
enemies and find extra items and things like that. So it's definitely worth exploring
Mhm.
that the initial map to its full extent.
Yeah. There's a lot of goodies. There's a lot of goodies in both this map and in the dungeon. There's like a secret in the dungeon that not everybody has like found. Like there's like a secret room in there.
Ooh.
So it's fun. There's like all kinds of I love like making secrets. Like that's my favorite part of level design. Things that the player is like, is this something? And then they like check it out and it is, and they're like, whoa, like this is cool.
Okay, now I need to try it again.
The secret room, yes.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely want to find those things. That's awesome. So, want to dig into the game a bit again here. Um, you said earlier that you're looking at releasing the first complete chapter later this year.
Yes,
So,
yes.
how do you envision the chapters working, and how many chapters are you thinking?
So, there are gonna be exactly 3 chapters.
Hmm.
The chapters kind of came, like I have had the full game in mind, and it's just, like, it's too big for one person. It's like, it just this thing is, like, such a behemoth of a project. And I was like, well, I had a couple different options. I like could have gone like the route of like trying to get the whole thing done all at once, but it would take me like a really long time to do it and I would have to seek funding. And I was like, or, I can just split it into the 3 parts, finish the first chapter, get an idea for like, what my production and release process is like,
Hmm.
and then the 2nd and 3rd chapter, it's almost like splitting it into 3 smaller games instead of doing this one giant project, but the story is planned in such a way that, like, the 3 chapters actually make a lot of sense.
Hmm.
I want them to feel very complete. So, like, you play the 1st chapter, it's still gonna be I believe like, I'm ballparking about 10 hours, maybe
Hmm.
more right now for the 1st chapter, so it's gonna be, like, a sizable game still, on its own, and you have this sort of complete story, but obviously, like, you wanna know more, like, there's more that's gonna happen. And then the 2nd and 3rd chapter will be kind of similar in length, the same idea, uh, and yeah, they all kind of work together with each other. I wanted it to be something that is like everything like works together. It's not like, oh, I'm just like making up chapters as I go. Like it's
Hmm.
all like planned out basically already. I'm just splitting it to make the production and work a lot easier for me and just a better experience, I think, for people who want to play the game too. Like there are people who have been waiting since 2018 since I started this thing. So I was like, I gotta give them something.
I think a 10-hour chapter is nice as well, especially when you compare with these silly large RPGs that take over 100 hours to complete, and you're like, I don't know
Yeah.
where I am. I'm 70 hours in.
Yeah.
Am I even at the halfway point?
Yeah, that was another sort of factor I think too is um I love Japanese RPGs. I love RPGs in general, but like I feel like nowadays they're just all so big and they're so
Hmm.
long and like a lot of us like don't have like the time. So I like the idea of like giving it in these sort of like sizable chunks. So like you play it and you're like, "Oh, that was a good experience and that was like manageable and I could finish it."
Hmm.
And then, like, when chapter 2 comes out, you can either replay chapter 1 or you get a nice reminder of, like, what happened and you can just sort of continue on. I want it to be, like, a really seamless experience when, I do come out with it, like, that your saves are gonna carry across. Um, I'm left thinking of Golden Sun, like, Golden Sun kinda did the same thing, right? Like, you had the 1st game on the Game Boy, and then you had the 2nd game on the Game Boy, and that just cut off the 1st game just kinda, like, cut off, it was, like, a super crazy cliffhanger. You're like, "Oh, no." But you had to, like, type in the code to transfer your save over to the 2nd game, so I was like, "If they can do it, I can do it too."
Yeah, I like that. I think that's smart. And yeah, a total of 30 to 40 hours,
Yeah.
something like that. That's way more manageable. Um, I'm
Yeah.
a yeah full-time worker and then full-time dad, and
Yeah.
also do this nonprofit on the side. And I also want to play games.
Yeah, yeah.
And making time for a game that's 100 plus hours is very, very hard. 30 to 40 hours I can manage. So yeah, I'm definitely
Mm.
looking
Yeah.
forward to those 3 chapters to come out. So
Excellent.
when do you I know in the demo, and release dates are always floating, of course, but in the
Yes.
demo, when you um within the demo, you mentioned that chapter 1 of 3 is due to release late this year.
Yeah.
Is that still the plan?
That is the plan. I really wanna get it out by the end of this year.
Hmm.
I've just been, like, dying to, like, release this thing, especially given, like, when I had worked on the alpha. I basically, like, dropped everything to rework the game, like, at its core, so I'm like, now that I've got this good foundation, I wanna, like, move forward with everything, so I'm really shooting for the end of this year. I mean, I'm a part-time developer, life happens, like, I keep it very, like, loose. I have regular developers logs every month where I sorta let people know what my progress is and if I'm still on track. But I'm not gonna, like, officially announce a date or anything like that until I'm, like, certain. Um, it also depends on, like, what other games and stuff are coming out, like, I
Hmm.
know, like, Breath of the Wild 2 is due to come out, and if, like, Breath of the Wild 2 comes out in, like, the same time that I'm planning on releasing Chapter 1, like, I'm gonna wait a little bit because I'm gonna get drowned out, by, like, those kinds of things, so, it all kinda depends on how, like, how my process goes, how, when I, like, sit down and actually start, like, making maps and stuff,
Hmm.
it will go a lot faster, I think, than the past couple of years, which has just been, like, raw, like, programming and planning and stuff, and seeing how that goes, and I'm hoping I would love to get chapter 1 out, by the end of this year, and then the goal would be, like, maybe a chapter a year, but, I gotta give myself a little time. The other reason why I wanted to do the chapters method is because it also gives me a little time to, like, rest and recover
Hmm.
before doing it, as opposed to doing this, like, massive game release and, like, spending all of this time and, like, burning myself out and stuff, so I give myself a little bit of time to, like, relax, see how the release goes, and then, come out with the next chapter and then the chapter after that and stuff.
You mentioned earlier that MKXP makes it easier to port to other systems as well, or other operating systems like Mac and Linux. Um, does that also mean that you can port the game to, say, Switch or something like that, or how does that work?
Unfortunately not, and it's because MKXP is open source, which doesn't play nice with, other the licensing with it is a little bit gray,
Hmm.
and doesn't play nice with consoles, so I'm definitely not guaranteeing, like, a console port. I know everybody wants to put I wanna put the game on the Switch so bad, but I don't wanna guarantee it unless I'm sure. I know even the other folks that had used MKXP, I think they had had the whole game moved over to, like, Unity in order to, like, port it to the Switch and stuff because it's this whole thing. So at the moment, no, like, the framework isn't there. So it would be something that I think I'd consider after all 3 chapters are out,
Hmm.
because then it's like then I can just, like, put it all together, and then have it on consoles as, like, one thing, as opposed to, like, each individual chapter, I think on a console would not work out very well. So
Yeah, that
I have
might
to
be a
manage
little
my
weird. Yeah.
I have to manage my expectations a little bit here. So, yeah, unfortunately not, I can't guarantee any consoles, but if it does well, and, if people, like, support the game and stuff, it could certainly happen in the future. I want it to happen in the future. I would love to see it on a console.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was playing it here on my gaming rig here behind me, and yeah, it's just beautiful. I need to hook it up to the CRT as well. See how it
Oh,
looks.
yeah.
So
Oh, that would be
that could be
so
fun.
cool. I bet it
Yeah,
looks super cool on a CRT.
yeah. I think that could be
Makes
a
the
super fun.
makes the pixel art look, like, very smooth.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna finish up here, but before we finish up, I want to talk a little about your review of the indie game scene. So we met at the Boston Festival of Indie Games, the virtual festival that happened a couple of months ago. The Boston scene is pretty pretty well established. I
Mm,
would say there's a lot of game developers around here.
yes.
What do you are you involved in any groups or meetups, or what do you think about the local Boston scene and then the global one?
Well, I'm very much like a game development hermit. I'm actually not from Boston. I live in Connecticut. But Boston is, like, the closest sort of area to me where there is, like, game development stuff. Given Boston Fig is the only thing that I actually have, like, direct familiarity with, and have gone to a couple of years. Given the pandemic, it's been kind of hard to go to other stuff. So I don't really have an opinion on the local scene because I'm, like, not super involved in it. Most of the things I do are online. I'm very intertwined in the RPG Maker community, like, which
Mm,
is, like, its own little thing. Um, but globally, I see, I'm very much on, like, on Twitter and stuff trying to, like, show off the game and stuff, and I see other games that people are working on, And I think it's really cool, like, how accessible indie gaming is right now. Like, I see games from everywhere. I see games being made from developers all over the world, and it's just really nice to see that because I know that, like, historically, a lot of games have only come from, like, the US and, like, Europe and Japan and stuff, and now we're seeing, like, all of these other, like, countries making games and young developers like me and, like, just people, like, getting to do their own independent thing and bring their ideas to life is, like, I don't know, it's just super cool. It's super cool. So I have a lot of hope for it. I think it's just gonna keep getting better and, like, more cool ideas are gonna keep, appearing, and, yeah, I'm, like, looking forward to it. I'm, like, super grateful for the opportunity that I've had to, like, make this game. Like, if it wasn't for, like, the internet and, like, all of the free resources available for people to learn game development, I wouldn't have been able to even do this, and, of course, all the people I know that I met through Discord, um, and who helped me and gave me, both advice and feedback has been, like, had a huge impact too.
Yeah, I think the indie scene is special.
It is, yeah.
Everyone is super helpful and just trying to make something fun,
Mhm.
something that people can enjoy.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you putting your heart and soul into something that you hope people will enjoy. Even though
Mm.
you're a hermit, you 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 have this community of people who are testing your game, downloading the demo, and providing feedback, helping you become better
Mm.
and learn. And as you said, online learning resources and online just resources for game making as well, like the open source projects that augment existing products and things like that.
Yeah.
It's I'm very, very grateful that we have a fantastic indie scene right now. I think it's really cool to see. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
so to wrap things up, where can people find you, information about the game, and download the demo?
So, I have my website, studioalemni.com. Um, from there is kind of where you can find everything. The game is available on a couple different platforms, the demo. It's on Steam, it's on itch.io, and it's on GameJolt, and it's on rpgmaker.net. So it's on a few different places that you can download it. If you don't want to download the Steam launcher, you can get it on itch.io or one of the other platforms. It's available for both Windows and Mac OS. Linux soon. Working on that with the next update. The capability is there. It's just something that I had to sort of put aside because it was just a lot of extra work to do on top of already making the demo. I have a Discord server for the game. It's only for the game. I don't really do like much extra community stuff. I keep it kind of focused on the game again because I'm like so into like development. Just trying to like keep it going. And I am on Twitter. I have the Studio Alemni Twitter, which is like the official one, and I do have a personal Twitter. It's not like super professional, but if people want to see like me and like the things that I'm interested in, and like they can find me there as well. Or of course, you can find me on my Discord via Discord as well. These are all places. But yeah, my Twitter is Jaiden Alemni. Studio Alemni is the studio. Astravia Game is the handle for Astravia. It's all very um, obvious, I think.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, this has been super, super fun. I want to thank you, Jaden,
Thank you.
for volunteering to be interviewed here. This has been super fun, and I had a blast. As I said, I had a blast playing through the game. Highly recommend everyone to try out the demo and give feedback after the demo. It's super easy to do, short Google form, so please do that. Play through the demo, super super fun, very colorful, stupid bees. It's just a super fun game, and I'm really really looking forward to seeing more of Legends of Astravia. Here, it's going to be a great game, and I'm looking forward to chapter one here. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Jaden. It's been fantastic. And for everyone listening or watching, you can find us at hitsave.org on the interwebs. You can find us at hitsaveorg on Twitter, and I'm at Jonas Rossland everywhere as well. Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening. Have a fantastic rest of the week, and catch you next time.